Prudential Committee meeting. I'm sorry. Going to call the Katuitt Fire District Prudential Committee meeting of the 25th of March, 2024. Seth Burdick.
He's here.
Roll call.
Oh,
Seth Burdick present.
Mark Lynch,
Present.
Graham Parks present, Ray Perone present,
Charlie.
Kelly present. Can you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
And justice for all. Yep.
Next is public comment. Whoever wants to come up here, come and sit in this chair, please. So I'll capture you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Janet Milkman. I'm the Executive Director of the Barnstable Land Trust. And I'm here with a request for the fire district to consider supporting the land trust in the purchase of a property 4609 Falmouth Road, which we have just gotten our offer accepted on. This is a 5.85 acre parcel, which is in zone 2 and connected abutting another 7 acre parcel that Barnstable Land Trust owns with significant conservation value and also clear water supply protection value. I have some materials I can leave with you. This was something that happened pretty quickly, which is why I just was at the Katuitt Water Department meeting this past week. This parcel had been on our radar for a while, but it had been under agreement. There was going to be a 40B development on it with 34 units, which the Katuitt Water District was concerned about and that's how it came back to our attention. When that developer withdrew, we went and made an offer for the land trust to purchase the land, which was just accepted this morning. So we have had this kind of relationship with the district in the past when we purchased the Lowell Park, the 19 acres around Lowell Park Field, and are looking for that kind of support again. The total project cost is about $640,000, and we're looking for support in the order of about $50,000 from the district or the water district. I'm not sure how that works.
I'll just mention Scott, for the record, Scott Horsley, chair of the water. We did meet with Janet last week, and if you already know, you'll be hearing a lot more about, we're trying to implement a source water protection program to avoid high treatment costs later. And the best way to do this is to preserve property within the zone 2 area. As Janet mentioned, not long ago, all of the water commissioners and our superintendent, Chris Wiseman, went to town hall to talk with the town planning staff about a high density project that was proposed on this parcel with wastewater and stormwater discharges right within the zone 2. It's clearly a parcel that's getting targeted for development. It's right upstream of our water supply. So we think this is a really good, very inexpensive investment for the protection of the water supply.
And I will leave you with some materials since I know this is the first time you're hearing of it.
So can I just remind people about the Lowell project up at the park? That money didn't come from the fire district. that money was incorporated in the money that we got from the federal government grant for the water tower that was built. And along with that, Mike Daly figured out a way to get the money for the low. It was partially in zone 2 to get it for that. So that's how that came about. I'm going to have to speak with Mark Boudreau, our lawyer. I don't know if we certainly have the ability to purchase land for the water department. But I don't know if we have the ability to just give money to somebody else to purchase the land. So I think that will need clarification.
We did review the enabling legislation again. It does say we have the land for multiple purposes, including protecting. The word protecting is in the, that's exactly what this is for. So we can get a legal opinion what protecting means. I think I know.
No, it's not that. But we're not, the district isn't purchasing the entire property.
Correct.
We're giving money to someone else to purchase the property.
For protecting.
Right,
Yes.
but I don't know if,
Just other ones.
Yes. Again, we can play lawyer. Part we're talking about does say, let me go back. Purchase or otherwise hold all lands, rights of way, easements necessary for collecting, storing, holding, purifying, and protecting and preserving the purity thereof, etc. So again, we can, I hope we can do this because this is what we have to do as water commissioners. Our job is to provide clean drinking water. And we know that wastewater is a big threat. And this suggests to me that we can do water, I would think all within our jurisdiction. If people feel they want to get right away, I have no problem with that. I think I understand what this says.
Yeah, I agree with Fran. I'm inclined from the very little bit I've heard so far, to think this is a good idea. Clearly, we can do it, meaning the Katuah Fire District can do it. If someone else does it, can we reimburse them? Thank you. That's the question, and it's worth getting legal advice on.
And-
Just, if I can ask a couple of questions. First, I missed your last name.
It's Milkman.
Milkman.
Yeah,
And this, so for people who are maybe listening, the address was 4609 Route 28.
yes.
So this is between Capizzi
And
and
Bellagio.
Bellagio. Okay. 5.5 acre parcel. You said $640,000. You used the term that was the cost or the overall cost or?
Yeah, so the purchase price is, the offer is 600,000. Then there's project costs associated with that.
Project cost, that's
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
was interested in. What
Yeah.
is, so the amount that was, the property was purchased for was $600,000?
That's the offer
That's-
amount that was accepted,
Okay.
yes.
And then
Yes.
the other costs would be what?
The other costs are appraisal, closing costs, title exam, those kinds of things that we bear. And we will apply for a grant from the Commonwealth for about half the funding. We're hoping to get community preservation funding in support. And then some also support from the district. And just to address your question, Fran, I think the way it was done and could be done now, the way it was done with Lowell Park was that the conservation restriction is being co-held by the water district and I think the compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust. So for it's sort of like an easement for Mark Boudreau purposes, and he happens to be our attorney too, so he knows, he will understand sort of this transaction, but what you get for your contribution would be a conservation restriction or co-holding it.
And that's something that you would grant. In other words, the money that we would give you would be in exchange for an easement. How long does the easement last?
In perpetuity.
What are the limits on your ability to sell?
We can
Okay.
sell it, but it can never be developed. So in Massachusetts, the Commonwealth stands behind what's called here is a conservation restriction. Other places it's called a conservation easement. And they sign off on every one, and it runs with the land. So no matter who ends up with owning the land, a conservation restriction will extinguish the development rights forever. It could allow for water supply activities if that was desirable, but
So it puts a permanent restriction on the land.
yes. Yes,
You said that was what was done, what evidence do we have of that?
Lowell Park, the Lowell Park project.
That's nice, but what evidence do we have of that protection, of that easement?
It's a legal document called, it's recorded in the Registry of Deeds.
Yes.
Yeah,
None of this has been done yet, but this is,
No, I'm trying to find out
yeah,
what we got for our
Yeah.
money the
Yeah.
last time around,
yeah,
and if that could apply to this time.
yes.
so this is the same document, type of document that we're using for the continuous school property.
Yeah, right.
Scott, can you remind us, what does zone 2 mean for the audience and
Sure.
as well?
Yes, certainly. So zone 2 is a state designated protection area for public water supplies. And it is intended to identify the land area that, from which water flows to the pumping well under certain set of conditions. And this is the state actually requires towns and water suppliers to protect that land.
And as compared to zone 1,
Zone 1 is a 400-foot radius.
and zone 2
Zone
is,
2 is the larger area that the water comes from, because water comes from far beyond the 400-foot radius.
Right. Is there a particular number for what a zone 2 is, or is it just,
I mean, distance,
yeah,
each one is unique to the flow conditions, and we've had several rounds of groundwater modeling here that shows pretty accurately where the water comes from. The
gotcha.
town has also adopted a zoning overlay based upon this information.
Do you know offhand how far the well is from like the edge of this property, just to give us
Well,
some?
I don't want to hazard, I don't know.
We could help,
Sorry?
It's less than a mile.
Less than a mile, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just a kind of a clarification. Just to kind of clarify if I remember right. When we did this originally, it went to district meeting, we backed it, as the water department did, talked on it a little bit. And we went in with the town of Barnstable and everybody else on this, but it got voted on at district meeting and it didn't have the funding, it just said it would get the funding. With the USDA grant that it got rolled into, that came about later on when we were doing the tank, we ended up getting the USDA loan and they gave it a $500,000 grant with it. And Mike rolled it in, then said, this is a win-win for us. And he rolled it in at that point, so that's how that came up to be paid through USDA and everything.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks, Chris.
Yeah, do you have any questions?
I don't.
Any questions?
It's designated zone 2. And yet there was going to be a development permitted.
Well, this is chapter 40B, which is our comprehensive permit affordable housing
So
in
that
Massachusetts,
trumps everything.
which is a great law for affordable housing, except for one thing. The way it's written, it allows you to put the development anywhere without regard to supply, so it creates conflicts.
Yeah.
It's a very poor piece of legislation to determine, to get affordable housing, but
Very poor.
there are better ways to do it.
Okay, thank you.
this for you. If I have another.
Thank you.
Hi,
State your names, please.
yes. I am Stacy Gunther. I live in Osterville. I'm on the steering committee for Save Greater Dowses Beach, which is a citizens group. This is Peter Hansen.
I'm also on the Dels's Beach Board, and also Calm Water Commissioner. We just have a small little presentation tonight.
You have some handouts.
Yeah.
Would that support what we're gonna say? Thank you for hearing us. We're here to keep you informed and make two requests regarding the three offshore wind projects proposed and under development by Avangrid Renewables LLC for Barnstable. We plan on attending the Katuitt Water Commissioners meeting in April. We believe the US EPA has an obligation to review all of these projects. Under its sole source aquifer program, EPA reviews are mandatory when a project receives federal financial assistance. Details supporting this are included on our handouts. Therefore, we urge the Katuitt Fire District to consider petitioning the EPA officials in Washington, DC and Boston to initiate such a review.
The third of these projects, Commonwealth Wind, with its proposed 1,200 megawatts, 3 cable landing at Dowson's Beach, is in its early stages of permitting. It has no PPAs, no host agreement, and the town has expressed disinterest in this project. Despite this, Avangrid continues to promote this project and is rebidding on PPAs. It includes the planned construction of a massive substation on 28 acres at the Clay Hill Fire Tower. It is estimated that this will contain 200,000 gallons of dielectric fluid that, if spilled or if there is a fire, could potentially threaten the sole source aquifer and drinking water for many Cape Codders. The proposed site is also a wellhead protection zone.
Sure. The town of Barnstable and Save Dowses have both filed formal petitions for full intervenor status with the EFSB for the Commonwealth Wind project. The deadline has passed to file for the Park City Wind Craigville project. Given that the Katuitt Fire District in particular, water commissioners are affected by this matter, and the responsibility is to protect our drinking water, we are asking that the district also petition for full intervenor status. This will give Katuitt officials a real seat at the table during any proceeding. We've included a copy of the town's petition to intervene and other supporting information, which should be helpful in our handouts.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
What's a PPP?
PPA is like their contracts between power purchase agreements.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, they were delayed. They were in default for both
Yeah,
Commonwealth Wind and Park City Wind,
right, yeah,
and the rebidding.
yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
On to budgets.
Okay, that public comment. We'll do minute first.
Oh, yeah. The November minutes, have everybody read those?
I did. Yes,
Yes. And any problems with the minutes?
after me.
No. Okay. Anybody else? Minutes?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. Have the fire commissioners come, the fire department come for the budget review first.
Evening.
So we have the proposal up in front of you, and I think that's being shared for the folks online.
Give a spare one. Chief, I didn't purchase that one.
I do not,
That's
I do not have a spare one, so.
Oh, look at it. Thanks. Oh, that's so cool.
The articles that, do you want to start with the articles, what's your general?
Let's go through the regular budget first.
Okay, sure, sounds good. The salaries and wages, which is at the top, the requesting it will be a total of 10.87% increase for this fiscal year. The drivers would be the contractual obligations associated with the CBA. And one of the biggest percentage increases would be for incident recall. And that has been appropriately, our folks have been coming back in the last contract. We did some incentives to increase callback to staff the second ambulance and to take on second calls, which I mentioned in the past, about 30% of our calls are overlapping incidents. So in lieu of hiring additional permanent full-time personnel, the callback is how we handle those additional calls. So that's an increase there. Questions? So that would be a total of 2,309,735 for salaries and wages for the 12 full-time personnel, the chief, the deputy, as well as the recall and the EMS training certifications and for overtime associated with those. Questions on that?
No.
Yeah, so the 10.43% increase in permanent full-time.
Yep.
So the contract called for 6% annual increases.
Yep.
Plus, I'll call them training sweeteners.
Compensation for certifications.
Yes.
Yeah, so yes, as you recall from your time on the negotiating committee, the contractual raises were 6% per year. However, there are also additional training certification monies added to the base pay for the personnel. So the boat operators, fire prevention officer, certain training certificates that they have. So once those individuals get all of those possible certifications, then you'll just see the standard CBA collective bargaining wages in just strictly in line with that. But as additional people get those certifications, and it's going to show additional percentage, if that makes sense. What if everybody achieves all of those certifications, then it'll just stick to that percentage that is in the CBA. But as some folks get those, it's going to cause these higher percentages until everybody levels out. And then
I was not expecting to see a 6% raise. I expected it to be more than. Surprised that the, almost 11% is. Maybe I'm being optimistic, or I'm assuming that the first year that this was training certification sweetener was available, that people took advantage of that, such that we are hopefully likely to see a decline in the ensuing 2 years, or are firefighters still?
So
In other words, if everyone undertook all of the training programs they could in year one, we would expect to see a big bump and then something close to 6% in prior years. Well, we're not going to see 11% raises over the course of the contract, are we?
no, so you're going to see more people in the initial phases, but not everybody's going to get that in the first year or even 2 years. It takes time to get a lot of these. These are a lot of these courses take a significant amount of time. First, you have to find them. They're tough to get into. And then once you're in them, it takes time to get them done, so it'll probably take the full period of this contract for everybody to get those trainings, and some people may choose not to pursue all of the possible certifications.
So do you think the result of that is gonna be 11% annual salary and wage increases for the next 3 years?
No, I wouldn't think so. I think that you're gonna see so we're already 1 year, right? So FY 24 was the first year of this contract. So we saw a bump there. 25 is where we're preparing for.
This is then the second year.
Yeah, this is the second year of the 3-year contract. Yep. So I would suspect that most people that are gonna pursue these are gonna do it over the 3-year period that this CBA is covering. And then,
Chief, aren't there step increases?
yep, yeah, though, that would be the 6%, that the step increase at the CBA, and I think that is what your question is perhaps, would it be
That's
more in
what
line
I'm-
with that 6%?
Yes.
Yeah, and eventually it will get, as everybody gets those certifications, then you'll see it level out, and then it would just be the COLAs, if you will, that are negotiated. But this is still the people getting those certifications, so.
And the other big jump, 123%, is on that, the recall. And again, for the people on listening, for the citizens, can you very briefly describe what that means?
So when a call comes in and our folks are committed on other incidents, we bring in, depending on what type of call it is and how long the crew is going to be committed, we will bring in off-duty personnel to cover the station and handle additional calls and or go and assist at the scene of those incidents. So if it's a fire, they'll go to the scene. If it's a marine call, they'll go to the scene. If it's a person that is perhaps on the second floor of a house or needs additional support to get out of the building for lifting and moving, our personnel will go to the scene of the incident and assist the 3 folks on duty. So,
And when you're getting up to $156,000, does it make sense to hire an additional full-time firefighter to reduce that?
That's a great question, and I would say eventually we're gonna get there. But this is in lieu of that.
Is there any reason why the recall rates have increased so dramatically? That from fiscal 23, they're basically doubling every year.
So I'd say a couple things. One, I think there's been an organizational culture shift. And I think that there is also some incentives that were being piloted prior to my arrival here, that allowed for I think they changed the minimum callback time, and that was memorialized in the last CBA, as well as some of the other access to leave and things of that nature. So that was all memorialized in the CBA that you're on that negotiating committee for. And those, as I said, were in place, they're being trialed, they were effective, they're memorialized, and also we had our busiest calendar year on record, a 20% increase in call volume for the organization in calendar year 23. And when there are more calls, there's more callback, and so.
Any idea why there was such a big jump in calls?
Yeah, I say that guessing that I do think that more people moved here during COVID and maybe haven't left, and more when there are more people, that it's just it's another impact of more calls.
Actually, I was gonna wonder how you're gonna get to 156. Your running rate is 166 currently. So must be planning to take actions to reduce the incidents. Not to put you on the
Yeah,
spot,
yep, I don't,
but, I mean, that
you
supports the
referring
122.
to, are you referring to year to date, or
Yeah,
are you
year to date,
extrapolating it?
Then I annualize it.
Yep,
You've got 97 through the end of February. If I do, it's just math.
yeah.
It says that you'll end up at 166.
The math that we extrapolated out came out to the number that we requested, so I guess we'll get together
Like the
and,
mathematical, yours is
yeah.
intelligent.
yeah, no, yeah, the number that I put in here was what we had extrapolated out. But certainly I'll take a look at your numbers to
Just math.
see this.
Pure math.
Right.
So I would rely on yours, but I mean, in a way, it says that 122 is a real number.
And again, the incident perm that's doubling every year. That is driven by the definition in the contract of when you need to call in additional people.
No, that's policy, and the policy is, there are certain types of call categories that bring people in automatically, and there are certain types of calls that we wait until we're gonna be committed for a certain period of time, and then the offices will call people in.
So that is something within our control outside of the contract to a large extent.
It is, yeah, yep, yep. You want to make sure we have people coming in.
Yeah.
Particularly now that we have the second ambulance, because the other option is hiring 4 additional personnel at least, if not 8 additional personnel. To make sure that you have enough bodies to put another ambulance on the road.
Yeah. That just jumps out at me as something that needs to be addressed. It's a big number that's doubling every year. I can't say that I don't have an answer to it, but that's a huge.
Yeah, the answer is adding personnel. So if you want to see that number go down, your permanent operating budget's gonna go up.
Right.
It's,
Or the policy could revert to what it was. I don't even know what the policy is, so I'm just.
Yeah, no, that's not
All
a
we're
good
talking
idea.
about are levers as to what could. I'm not saying you should,
mhm.
it just, it's pretty long.
If I may, gentlemen.
Come on up.
Just Kevin Conley, Chairman of the Board of Fire Commissioners. My only comment would be is we need to keep in mind that we have 3 people on the station during the day or at night. So when there is a callback, it's so we can provide coverage to the village. Right, 3 people are out, either on an ambulance call or on a fire call. What we try to do with the policy that's in place is get people back into the station, and it's been successful. So that we have the ability to cover the rest of the village, period.
Got it.
That's why that money's there.
Yeah.
We have a second ambulance now running. We've had concurrent calls with both the ambulances now. Right, so we're up and running there, and it could always be a situation where another fire could come in, not very likely, but the fact of the matter is the policy is working.
Agree with all that. I'm looking at the trend here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's,
Absolutely.
doubling every year of a big number is, I mean, that's a huge driver. So something is happening.
Right, more calls are coming in,
Calls.
and we're getting better coverage, so.
Now, so with the new ambulance and with having 2 functional ambulances and having 2 crews able to operate, so we've had I realize it's a relatively short period of time, but has there been a reduction in mutual aid calls and an improved response time? So could you look at this as a bill for that? Do you know what I'm saying? So has there been a reduction in the mutual aid calls that we've been sending to Mashpee or Com or whomever?
I'd have to look into that. We do give, I can tell you that we give about equal and get equal now.
Right.
It's balanced out that much because we put that out every month now to the board. as far as over last year, I don't have that
And
information.
then what would be
Seth, if I back up for 1 second, are you asking, and perhaps I'm wrong here, are you asking how many times we go out or how many times people
No,
come in
like,
for us to mutual?
now that we have two
Right.
ambulances in situations where you would have otherwise had a mutual aid call.
Correct, come in for us, right?
Yeah, like now that's been reduced as a result of this.
Right.
That's what I'm curious.
Right,
about.
so anytime we've had an overlap,
Mhm.
right, and if we do how many overlaps, every time we've had an overlap would have been
A mutual aid.
a mutual aid
Right.
call, right?
And so I guess what I'm trying to say, then, can you, now, what was the average response time for a mutual aid call as opposed to an average response time for this new ambulance, which can then be manned to call back and then hit another call?
I don't have that right
Very
off the top.
specific question.
Yeah, we can pull that data out of the reports. I don't have that
No, of
right
course,
here.
but I just,
think
it's, you know, as a, as a response to the obvious escalation of the cost, if there's a quantitative,
Mhm.
if we can say, well, yes, look, because I don't know, people will look at that and say, well, what the heck is this? We went from 65 to 36, everyone must have been very unhappy that year in the station, and then we go to 70 and then to 156, then you could say, well, yes, it did escalate, but in you know, it can be in relation to these facts that we can reduce the mutual aid calls, which will do for this time, which, you know, save people's lives or
Right.
whatever the.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious about that. As it
We'll take
pertains
it, well, that's a good question, we'll take a look at those numbers.
Yeah, because I mean, over the course of, now it's only been what, 6 months since this ambulance.
Oh, not
was-
even.
Not even,
But
Month and a
over
half,
the
3.
course of a year,
it's just a
it'd
couple
be
months.
interesting to keep track of, I'm sure you will, of what that, if there's an improvement of
Yeah.
service and
Sure.
response,
Yeah.
and then not having to rely on Mashpee
Right,
or, or whatever, that was my. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that's good question. We've been live about 3 months with the second ambulance, so.
right. Well, there you go.
I think the 156 is a bargain compared to the alternative choices.
I think that's 36 was a better bargain, but I get you, this is about safety and this, you know.
Depends on what the response, or what you're looking for is,
So
so.
that's, Seth raises a great point, you know, what our response times and.
Rick Fasano would like to speak. He's a fire commissioner. Please unmute, Rick. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I wanted to inquire about this line item from Ray in this presentation. When you look at the numbers for 23 and 24, we're talking about what was budgeted, not what the final expenditure was. Is that correct?
23 should be actual, Rich.
But it says budget.
23, I'm sorry. I'm looking at my schedule. 23 should be actual at 36,000.
It is actual.
It's
So,
actual.
so the fire department's column is mislabeled. It says
Budget.
fiscal year
Versus,
budget.
versus.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at mine.
You could change that tag.
Right, so this says budget, it should be actual, is what they're saying.
So what I'm looking at here shows kind of interesting, is the 21 actual 49,000, 22 actual 65,000, then it goes down pretty dramatically for fiscal year 23 actual 36,500. And then, you know, almost doubles the next year to 70, and the proposed budget is 150.
Yeah,
The first version says.
Well, I again am asking also about the fiscal 24 number of 70,000. Are we reporting on current to date, or does the 70 represent a projection? Because if it's
70.
current to date, it's not complete and will artificially inflate the rate of increase of what's being proposed for 25.
Rick, the 70 is a budget figure. I mentioned earlier a running rate. The year-to-date through February, the actual figure is 97,000. And when I annualize that, it comes to 166. That's why I was saying the 156 is actually represents a reduction from their current running rate. So if
Right, and
nothing.
I think that's very important to take into account because it casts the 123% increase in a very different light. If we understand that we're actually asking in that line item for less than what the projection is will be expended in budget 24.
That's correct. That's what I tried to point out. That when you look at the actual running rate, we did not create schedules with running rates. Maybe we should think about doing that in the future to give a better comparison, because that comparison, if assumptions are correct, and my assumptions are purely mathematical, you would end up at 166,000. The chief is saying that as they looked at it with an intelligent extrapolation, they come up with a lower number. But it's still, in terms of range of magnitude, you're not looking at 122% increase from one year to the next. You're looking at something substantially less than that.
But that means that from fiscal year 23, we went from 36,500 to, you're saying, approximately 160,000?
That's correct.
So,
If that's, I mean, now I'm looking at my numbers that I thought were actual on the schedule, that the district schedule, and my number is higher for wages for 23. So I may not have given.
Yeah, these are showing budgeted numbers, not actuals on this spreadsheet. So,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how
That,
that happened, but these are budgeted numbers, not actuals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
so any idea what happened to make it go from 36,500 in 23 to approximately 160,000 in 24?
People came back.
I don't have that. I would have to get into Vadar, get into the ledger and find that number, and I will.
Because that's like a 400% increase.
What was the term you used? Cultural organizational shift? Or
Yes.
Culture shift.
But also keep in mind that 23 number didn't end off at 36, we don't believe, right?
Yeah,
That
this was budget.
That was the budget.
It was more than double that. As I recall, but I don't have.
I'll have
So
to,
this, I mean, maybe this is the first realistic line, but this is the first realistic budget that's been, for this item that's been proposed, because we had to release money earlier in the year to cover the overage that was in the overtime. Did we do that in this fiscal year for this very topic?
Yeah,
For the amount, did we do it twice? Or
no,
once?
once.
But, so was this in years past just a way to lowball the budget and then know I'm not saying anybody, but you know what I mean? Like it just, well, we don't know, well, maybe these will be, and then it ended up being a much bigger. Happy with coming back to the station, you seem to say with your organizational, ethos changing. But I mean,
So it looks like we have a couple to dos. We have to confirm what that 23 actual was versus what a budget was.
Yeah.
but at least this is a
And then
realistic
give us your
number.
best projection as to what it is
Right.
through the end of this fiscal year.
And then the other is relative to the callback,
Right.
excuse me, the mutual aid.
Because I mean, if that, in the light of that, if this were you know what I mean, if we had the option, it may not seem so shocking. It's like, that makes sense, obviously, trying to 156, whatever, and it has this for.
Is Rick saying something?
I think somebody else back on.
Okay.
If you're not speaking, anyone on Zoom, if you could please make sure you're on mute. We're hearing someone bleed through.
But that, I mean, I have a, before you go through, I mean, you're gonna go through the whole rest of the budget, but I mean, just a purely academic question. In the fire service, what is an average annual rate of increase or budget escalation? Is there any, I mean, if you could say, I think that may be a very broad, strange question. Because I mean, we're running 11% for salaries and wages, and this is 10% overall without any warrant spending for capital improvements or whatever, which, what was the rate that I know we're gonna get to all this, but I'm just curious now, because when you put in the articles that you were proposing, wasn't it gonna be closer to 17% as an overall rate of increase?
So the operating,
Well, operating plus
And-
capital.
with capital, it's significant with the capital because of the
Right, there's a big
fire engine program.
Which we'll get to that. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about, what is the average, what's in the industry standard for an average fire service organization for, you know how you can pick an industry and business. And say
Yeah.
what the rate of average rate of increases, whatever. Here, based on a number of different factors.
So are we
We'll just
talking
talk
operating?
Yeah, so without, because I realize that ambulance or the.
Yeah,
fire-
I would say, you know, I don't know for an industry-wide standard. Know what, I know what we need here.
Right.
And I know what we're missing, and I know where we need to go. And, but as far as how that compares to other departments, it's gonna vary. Have they been staying ahead of the curve with recruitment, retention, preventative maintenance, capital planning cycles? So they're more of in a maintenance mode. Some places are keeping pace, some places are ahead of pace, some places are behind. And it's really gonna depend on where they are on that curve in the organization and their maturity as an organization and their overall management and leadership of the organization. So
60.
I would say that to say that there's an industry standard, I don't really know if there is one. It's really gonna depend on where those organizations fall in there.
But there must be some kind of aggregate number. I mean, the way that people analyze things and.
Yeah,
There must be some aggregate. I mean, I'm not so concerned about that. I'm just,
You know-
like, as you describe it in the, you know, we've got our bell curve or our parabola or whatever. I'm not very good at those shape names, but so then. So I mean, my assumption is that, you know, we may well be somewhat behind the curve in terms of the things you mentioned. When it comes to, we're trying to right the ship or to
yeah,
get to the point where we are
yeah.
on par or exceeding the expectations, right? So are we gonna have a budgetary cycle, say over 5 years or 10 years? Where now it's gonna be front loaded and we're gonna be climbing that parabola. And then we're
Yeah.
gonna hit a point where then we can not assume that we're not gonna see a continual rate of increase, 10% year over year.
Yeah.
Just for the sake, just if you were to look at it over a 5 year period.
Yeah, I don't have that, but
Right.
I'll certainly look around to see what the projections are with our universe, if you will, which,
Right.
you know, the area departments on the Cape. I would venture to guess we're in close proximity.
Right.
So,
And then once we catch up from some of these deficiencies that may have built up over a period of years in terms of how we're spending, where we're spending, training and so on, that we could expect to plateau, like you say, but like you were saying, with this number here, with our callback number, we'll have a more realistic estimate now with the situation, with the operating situation in place that we have now,
mhm,
a more realistic idea of what these numbers, especially, you know, whether it pertains to the just for the incident permanent callbacks.
Yeah.
We'll have a more realistic budget number, just as well hit a stride and not have to be 10%. I believe. Anyway, sorry, that was just me opining.
yeah,
So here's a question. I'm not sure if it's more better directed to Ray or Sean, but. You know, we break out the chief and deputy chief salary and we know exactly what they make. And then it's all broken down. The full-time firefighters into different kind of categories. Is there a way we can? Basically, you know, what's the average full-time firefighter equivalent compensation in Katuitt? Is that a number that we can come
so
to?
there's a base wage scale. Yeah, absolutely. That was, again, and that presented in the negotiating committee that you're on, so.
Yeah, but is there not just the base, but with all the with the incentives and the, you know, the various callbacks, et cetera, what's the average?
So
I can
Full-time.
calculate it, I don't have it, but
Okay,
it's a number we can get and base it on actual wages paid today.
yeah, that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a different way to break it out. As I say, I can look here and see what your
Mhm,
salary and wages are and what the deputies are. It'd
yeah,
just be interesting to know what the,
We actually are supposed to be putting the salaries of everybody in the district in the annual report.
I thought that was in there, yeah.
We do
Is
every
it?
year,
Yeah,
great,
so.
so I can just look,
Sally produces it, we'll have it, but I'll do that as a separate exercise.
great, thank you.
exercise.
Thanks.
okay.
By the way, the 23 actual was 93,000 in that category.
Incident.
For incident
93,000.
Incident permit,
I'm sorry, say that again, which year?
23 actual was 93,000. So the budget was 36, the actual was 93.
So it doesn't represent as extreme an escalation. It's just been a budget category that has been under budget.
Yes. Well, that's,
But now.
consoles me a little. Thanks.
So can I ask a question about electricity? It doesn't look like you increased that.
I'm sorry, I told them not to bother. I captured what the increase would be, and I put it in the summary, so we had it.
Okay,
But I figured all their material was already prepared, and I said, leave your material as is, I'll pick it up in another place. It's about $4,000 by my
with
calculation.
more than
More.
this.
Yeah, we had increased our estimates significantly in FY 24 in anticipation of what was gonna happen, and it didn't materialize in this fiscal year, so we had built in a buffer already. And so we had been having some dialogue on what is the true number that we should be putting in there, because we had expected what hit us recently to have already happened, so we'd been planning for that. So, yeah, we've been going back and forth on dialing that number in.
So I have one other question about maintenance of the generator. I know you use South Shore generator.
Yeah.
I used to use them and I switched to Cape Independent Power because first of all, they're right in Mashpee. And so the travel time that South Shore charges would not apply to get from Mashpee to it. So that would save some money. And, you know, they're rated, I've been very satisfied with their service and everybody else is, so far as I know.
Yeah, certainly. We'll look into anything that we can see as saving monies. We switched trash vendors recently to save money and almost half. So, yeah.
Chief, the community risk reduction program, which hits both wages and then material, is that the program where people leave a number and if they don't call?
Yeah, that's the reassurance program. So that other FT wages, so the individuals that run that program, some days they have to do things off duty, install lock boxes and community risk reduction training programs and things of that nature. So so the wage increase and the other FT is associated with that. And then the training and education, just overall community risk reduction programs. We've been attending a lot more community events and the ability to purchase pamphlets and educational materials and things of that nature. So.
Okay. Thank you.
So, are there any more questions on the salary and wages portion of the budget? Okay,
Thank you.
yeah. And then the operating expenses are 4%, 4.08% increase. So our overall increase request for operating maintenance, salary, wages and miscellaneous expenses is a 9.83% increase. The big drivers in the increases here would be our repairs and maintenance for vehicles, which is a 37.04% increase in this fiscal year. And that's just in line with what we've been over the last few years, what we've been spending in that line. Radios and maintenance equipment, we've had increases in component and vendor increases. We are largely a Motorola organization, and the cost of doing business with the Motorola is increasing. Let's see, the telephone, it looks like there's a significant increase, but we had our telephone fees spread across two budget lines, and I spoke with Ray and Lisa about combining those, so just to simplify that. Slight decrease in our CMed fees, again, just looking back at 3 years, just trying to bring it into consistent what we're spending.
CMed?
That is the EMS dispatch system. It manages, it's like air traffic control for ambulances. We reduced the administrative expenses just to keep in line with what trending was, but we needed additional money in ambulance supplies and equipment. So we reduced 1,000 there, moved that into EMS, and requested an additional increase there. We are running the 2 ambulances. The difference with when we use certain supplies out of that ambulance, that's not split with Sandwich. So if we use something, just like if Sandwich uses something, they pay for that. So that is the increase there as opposed to maintenance, which we split. And then the community risk reduction that we already talked about. So any questions on those items? Okay. Now, here's where another big hit is for FY 25 proposed, and it's an article for to replace engine 263, which is a 30-year-old fire engine, and never in my lifetime did I think a fire engine would cost this much, but it's an $800,000 capital project right there, and we have additional costs associated with that because we have to budget a fire engine. We have to build and specify a fire engine that will fit in the basement of the firehouse, which has low ceiling heights, and the pitch needs to have a shorter wheelbase so that it doesn't bottom out as it backs in to or pulls out of the fire station out of the back. So generally, when you engineer something to fit into a fire station that's not to modern standards, it increases the costs. So 800,000 is what we're seeing out there, and keep in mind that the costs associated with these are going up exponentially. So this is probably a 3-year delivery date. If we were to order it right now, if we somehow were able to get permission to walk out the door and order this, it is at least 3 years from today before we would see it. Some places are getting 4 years. So, and there are relief valves in most of the contracts now do have relief valves in them for the vendors that if certain prices go to a certain extent, even what we have in the contract could go up. So that's the background on that.
I have questions for Ari. Was that the end of the fire engine aspect of it? That was the conclusion of what we were saying. Do you have any questions?
They're
I'll jump on it, but so how much is it if you design or how much is a standard ambulance fire truck that, you know, you would buy to fit into one of the modern day fire stations? It is a known dimension, not on a hill and so on, you know, roughly.
So I was checking with a neighboring fire chief just today when we we're talking about this, and in their FY 25 budget, they're asking for 1.1 million
For a standard fire engine of the same.
regular
capacity as
straight
this.
up fire engine, fully equipped.
To a more equipped than what you'd be ordering, or is it equivalent? I mean, is it not?
So I
Mercedes-Benz
I
versus
didn't
a Honda?
find out what so we just got a grant for new hose.
Uh-huh.
So we don't have to incur that cost. So I don't know if they're putting the air packs in it. There are some things that some departments put on, like the big light tower that is just, I don't know. Yeah, it's, to me, it's, kind of wasted money, but some places like that. So, I'm not saying get an inferior product by any stretch of the imagination, but, there are ways to.
So there's not a meaningful increase that is associated with designing or modifying?
There very well could be, once we start getting the vendors in to look at this.
Right, because
It could be.
This is a loose evaluation, like just a quote based on speculation. We needed a fire truck that does the bomb. We think we could get you one for, and so it's not like a hard number. So this number could be much higher. It could be 1.1. You know what I mean?
I suspect over the next couple of months, we will have the opportunity to have a conversation with the vendors and start working through what those numbers are gonna be.
Right.
This is the best estimate we have at this time based on the information we have.
Right. So this would appear at the district meeting this year?
Yes.
Yeah, it is scheduled and it's been showing up on the capital trajectory
For a number.
for a number.
But
Yeah,
now, so then if this number proves inadequate, or you'll be able to place the order and then return to a subsequent district meeting for an additional amount of money? I mean, do you know what I'm saying? So we get to May, but the warrant will be closed shortly, right? So there'll be no change in this number. And so then you deal with the vendors and they say it's right after the warrant closed and you find out, oh wait, it's gonna be $1.2 million. And then we'll take this erroneous number to the meeting and then have to then follow up and then reappropriate or do a second appropriation in order to cover the cost. My thought is, well, it's a twofold thing, I guess. One is that if there's an anticipation that this is gonna be an inadequate amount of money, why not ask for more? And then two was, it was gonna, Ari, and that was my first question about what is the variation in price if you're gonna have a fire truck that's gonna go into a standard boilerplate sort of building as opposed to our very unusual old-fashioned building that we have. So where does the study and the planning stand right now addressing that topic? Because I know the Catalyst was studying this for you of late. Was that the name of the company? Well, I'm thinking Catalyst. Catalyst. So meaning I'm just trying to tie these things together in my mind. If there's no difference in the price of the machine itself, then it's the non-issue. But I'm just curious, if we're getting closer to having a new station, but we're at the very end of the useful life of this engine, how much, do you see what I'm saying? Could we save money by waiting until we have a more standard station? Is that even worthwhile or is it totally foolish?
I would not anticipate that you'll save money by waiting.
Because of inflationary pressures and changes in.
Yeah, and I've been trying to nail this. It's not that we don't want to have the most accurate possible number to bring to everybody, because we certainly do. This has been an incredibly difficult time in the history of the fire service to narrow down some of these costs. And there is the additional dynamic and obviously in the background of a firehouse and all of that, but waiting, I would anticipate is just gonna add cost on it, so.
Sean, my view is that, if this is the best number you've come up with, it's the best number you've come up with. I certainly don't want, you to come in with, well, it could be more, so we're gonna put on some fat just in case, so. Come to us with.
No, there's no fat in this number.
That's exactly. my
There is
point.
no fat.
Exactly my point. I don't want you to say, well, everything's going up, so
No,
we'll if this is your sharp pencil number, then great. And I don't wanna. I don't know, maybe I was misinterpreting what you were saying,
No.
it might go up. So maybe we should ask for more. I'd rather just have you come back. if
Stay
it
where
goes
this
up.
is.
Yeah, so I guess this is the number right now that we're requesting based on the information that we have currently. It is very possible that we could have to come back and ask for more money, and that's why I point to these two gentlemen on, I suspect it'd be a special district meeting and that process.
All we can ask is you do your best, and
Yeah.
hopefully it doesn't come to that, but we'd rather have the best number
Yeah,
without any bad, so.
I agree with that. I just also, but I kind of love the idea of having to ask such a significant spending item, which will be an issue. I mean, there will be people who will be not, you know how these things go. And then to go back a couple of months later or whatever and say, wait a minute, we need another
Well, it
three
won't
hundred
be-
and fifty thousand.
It's a 3-year lead time. It probably won't be a couple of months
Right.
later,
Well, you know.
a couple of years
Couple of
later.
years later, really, forgotten by-
Yes, as my experience at West Barnstable.
Right, how long did it take for or did they have to do something similar when did they lowball or have a short number and then end up having to go back?
Yes, we had to go back, and also, we don't have the apparatus yet.
Oh, really? How many years has this been ongoing?
2,
And what was the escalation in price? How much did they get the first time? How much did they ask for the first time?
we asked for, 6, and we're now at 7.
Well, that's not so bad. Excellent. All right, just,
So I just want to make a quick point. This is not a lowball number. This
Yeah.
is this is the professional
Yeah.
estimate that the department has given us, right? So this is where we think we're gonna come in. Does that, could it vary? Absolutely could vary in today's world. But it's not a lowball. There's no intention of that. It's the number that we see right now.
sounds good.
And if we get it
I don't know.
approved, We'll be able to go out and start.
The process,
Start the process by getting a delivery, by
right?
getting on the schedule.
Right, and just for everybody's point of reference, I believe it was a year and a half ago, or over a year ago, we ordered our ambulance that we need to replace, and we still don't have a ship date on that yet. So everything's,
Yeah.
in a strange state right now.
Is there any resale value to a 33-year-old comfort truck?
No,
No.
I think so.
There's no collectors?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the last two items, or I take it back, the next two items, the protective clothing and the design, fire station design services?
Yeah, so our protective clothing, we have 6 sets that are at or approaching their end of life cycle for our standards. And so that's the cost of replacing the 6 sets.
And when you say standards, I assume there's some,
The National Fire Protection Association, the industry standard on for personal protective equipment for the fire service, yeah. The
and
structural
what does that
firefighting.
entail?
Helmet, hood, jacket, turnout pants, gloves, boots, so
Not air packs?
not air packs, it's a separate capital project. Yeah.
And then fire station design services?
Yeah, so we've employed the Catalyst Group to assist us with some conceptual design process with the expanding the firehouse that will and possibly encumbering the adjacent lot. There are a certain number of additional services that are included in that contract, and it's not necessarily with Catalyst, so to get the surveying done, to combine the 2 lots, to see if that's possible, we had a contract with a civil engineering company to do all the surveying. That was to the tune of almost
36.
almost $4,000. So there are these various actions and items that aren't included in the contract. So this isn't $50,000 to Catalyst. These are services that aren't covered in the contract with different. So if there's any assessment that needs to be done to the existing structure to see if we can utilize it, pieces of it, all of it, and expand off of that. those questions have to be asked and answered, and those are different, different vendors that would have to contract with that, so.
And if I may, Chief, just a perfect example would be, as we get on the path, we may need to have a structural engineer review the current station, the current foundation. As some people may know, that foundation is a combination of, a poured foundation, cinder block foundation, and stone. So it has a little bit of everything. So one of the things we're kind of anticipating, or we are anticipating, is that we'll probably have to do that structural engineer review. This funding is requested for items that will come along as we move forward with the process.
Okay, are we all set with the fire department?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chief, nice job. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chief.
Oh, okay. Didn't have to try.
Rowdy Deacon,
Boy Scout.
you want the capital or the business? I mean, sorry.
Regular water.
Yeah, I know. Just trying to. Have some more thoughts on it. Hold on. Watch.
All the way.
It must have been closed somehow. Fire department. I'm sitting on this chair. Right.
All right, Scott, you want to do the salaries there and?
Yeah, I'll just start maybe by indicating that we did do a pretty detailed review of staff. We went through a formal evaluation process and so Chris, and then Chris did the evaluations of the other staff. Our review of the so actually exceeded expectations. So we decided 2% increase and then added a 0.8% merit increase. Last year, we had a pretty substantial increase. I realized we couldn't go there again because there were a lot of adjustments, but we felt that if we felt that we deserved something, that Chris deserved something beyond the COLA increase, so this was a modest recommendation.
So can I ask a
Salary
question?
increase. Sure.
Where did you get the COLA figure? Because none of the COLA figures that I looked up and are more than 3 or 3.5%.
Oh, really?
Well, that was federal. That was the Biden December 22nd executive order for federal COLA.
5.2%?
Mhm.
It was how much?
5.2.
And you described it as the Biden,
Yeah, it was a December 22nd executive order,
and that covered what, federal employees?
federal, yeah.
Because I remember last year, we had some discussion about this and, you used the, Social Security increase. COLA, which was 8.7, and I remember saying, so next year, we're gonna use the same COLA, right? And it's 3.2%. So, you know, I'm not gonna go to war over 6% raises, but you guys need to pick a COLA and
Stick
stick
with
with it. You know,
I didn't recall that, but
yeah, really.
no, I don't remember that which COLA we used last year.
Oh, okay. Because
Well, we did have a discussion among the commissioners, and I think this is the number that we came up with for best current guidance, but I didn't recall that we used it.
Yeah, that was the only, that was
Yeah.
the current, if I had known, we would
Yeah.
have looked for that.
okay, if you guys would just give us your commitment that we're gonna use whatever,
Okay.
the federal COLA, the federal workforce COLA, or the social security COLA, whatever COLA. But.
I don't
gotta
think
be
I'd
the
go
same
with,
one.
I wouldn't go with the federal workforce. This is an abnormal. This is abnormal for them. So you'd be better using the Massachusetts, one or, social security.
Yeah, yeah, you can have debates over what's the best one, but it's definitely gotta be the same one.
Okay. Not aware. I don't recall that, sorry. But we can certainly stick with one.
It's gonna have to be until May, is it? You want something hard figures?
We need, the warrant is,
March,
the warrant's more
April.
finalized mid-April or at the April Prudential Committee meeting. Hmm?
Right, the April.
The April Prudential.
it's to be 30 days.
Yeah, I was just saying, you guys can discuss, I don't know if you have to have a meeting or to discuss, because you guys did both the meeting of that, so I mean, you'd have to
Only meeting within 30 days.
yeah,
We can discuss that
then
again.
we go back and look at it and see, do what we have for the next meeting.
Yep.
Okay, suggesting.
Chris, we had the same number of employees last year, right? 2 senior
We
operators.
did, we did lose one employee, about 2 to 3 months ago, so we do have a new hire.
Okay,
So, yeah, we do have a new hire now, his wages are less right now
okay,
and everything than the other gentleman.
and that person is an operator,
Excuse me?
that person.
Yeah, he's an operator right now, yes. Yep.
All right, thanks.
I can do the maintenance and stuff like that while we're here, just to go through. You can see we put in bold, any increases that are there. Some of them are, stations and tanks that are ongoing, stuff that's going on. I know that I have a repair that I have to do, whether we have some maintenance that's coming up with Stu that has to be done, so that gets up and down every year. We did increase, grounds because of how much, vendor rates we wrote down here. Let's see, water testing, we didn't increase it much, but based on all the tests that we are currently have to do, this is a figure that we've come up with current pricing that they have. So our maintenance has gone up 3.6%, excuse me, $3,600 for 3.03%. And our operations, under computer, this is something that Ray had talked to us later on, late this afternoon, and we might look at again. We have secure networks, which you guys used to deal with, I believe. They from their data system and turning over to a Teams system. So for us to do it, we have no choice to stay with them. We can't stay on the data. They're not going to support it anymore. So we have to go to the Teams system that they have. It's going to cost so much to do that. And we're going to be upgrading at the same time I'm going to be getting a new computer. They're going to put a docking station for Jen so she can, up top. So there's a few things there. That's the increase that we have under, confused, but we might end up going for an article on that. Ray was talking, he might feel more comfortable to put it into an article. So that might go down for that price, but it'll still be asked for in the special article. We have dues and licensing with the new hire. He's gonna be getting licenses more and more, so we kind of thought we had leveled out with the license end, and now we're gonna pay again for a new employee getting everything. Gas, just based on the current rates, and the mileage, actually, the new hire only lives across the street, so the truck doesn't go as far as it used to go either. So we save a little bit of mileage there. Truck repair, we did increase a little bit because we have been a lot more with the age of the vehicles as they get older, we need a little more repairs on them. Electricity has, I think Ray mentioned it earlier, we do belong to Cape Compact and they increased, we're kind of stuck in with signing the contract. Is it a 2-year contract or a 1-year?
I think it is.
I think it is a 2-year too, so we'll be stuck at these rates for a couple of years now, and as you can see, I mean, that's our biggest spender right there is electricity. We've actually looked at different ways to try to get it down, talking about even something small, solar around the stations or something like that, without cutting a lot of land or anything like that. Just something to try to fight the price of it, because it's just, the amount of money is ridiculous that we have to spend to keep those stations going. We did put in these variable speed drives that are supposed to bring the demand down, but they catch you on the other side now with, the power, how you got the 2 different sides on it, and everything, one goes up, the other goes down, it seems. The HVAC, we did increase with the current rates of fuel. And training and education, we lowered, but just because the staff that we have now, we only anticipate really with training and education, the new guy going for extra stuff. So that was an increase there of 10.35%. Kind of gets me in the end here, because we don't have anything different at the bottom. I don't have a total for you without knowing the salaries, how we're gonna do, but this current went in now. Our increase would be 5.34% with this that you have in your hand. As an increase for our staff and. Well. Any questions on the budget other than that?
I don't have a question. I didn't see anything for the billing.
It's already done.
That's already, the special article,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
it's been funded already.
I ran.
Funded?
Yes,
Random.
No, it's not.
Is it in use?
no, it's not.
No.
We haven't implemented it. I thought that the new system would satisfy the auditors. It did not, so now we have to look at going back and doing the lockbox.
Okay. Okay.
But my sort of random question is along the lines that I was asking the chief and Kevin, which is, what is the average rate of increase for a water department in our, in similar scenario, or just generally against the, what, I'm right? I mean, what is it?
There are surveys out there we can look at, staffing surveys, and
Right.
some towns are different. They pay a lot more, some pay a lot less. We're pretty competitive with somebody our size over in Barnstable.
And then what about like the whole, I'm talking like, because I'm less, like, for me personally, I'm less concerned about, the goal or whatever, the 3.6, I can, obviously, that's fine, but I'm just talking like the general increase, like, put on a bottom line number for budgetary increase here.
I would have to scan the local,
Random question.
yeah, I'd have to look and see on the salary survey,
Yeah.
what it's been lately. I think it all comes currently off of what's happening in the economy.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do they, because of course, each department is gonna have different priorities in terms of how they're handling all these different operational aspects. And then, of course, different levels of maintenance based on how, how it's been maintained over a period of decades. Like the chief was saying about the kind of, trying to get back to the standard or what standard you're at. I'm just curious, just overall, if we can, because we're not governed by Proposition 2.5 when it comes to our tax levy. And so we kind of have less of a guide or a guardrail for how these departments budget and then how we present that budget and then, you know, the rate of increase is less important to most people, it seems, than what the individual items that are like that fire truck, which is gonna be like 800,000, there we go, that's the thing that people are gonna be like, well, what's that? Or, do you know what I mean? But I'm just thinking broad, and I get some random.
So I guess the only thing I would offer, we haven't done a thorough review of all other water departments in terms of rates. But my guess is if you looked around, the ones who get largest increases are the ones that deal with the pollution problems.
Right.
Adding expensive treatment, because not only is it a huge capital cost, but it's a huge operation maintenance cost.
Right.
So I think if you looked around, the ones that would be off the charts would be the ones that haven't done source water protection. And they've waited until had to build a treatment plant, which is exactly what we're trying to avoid.
I'm looking at this big scary number of fiscal year 2020.
Right, because
That's what I'm saying.
that's what I'm thinking about overall, because just as a, you know, from a fiscal policy perspective.
Yeah.
You know, we as a fire district need to have we need to come up with some kind of fiscal policy. A reasonable percentage of increase, or how to determine that reasonable percentage of increase in so far as the budgeting for our 3 departments goes. And what is it that I mean, granted, you can't control certain things, but you know, you can always function within a framework, say with the policy of, it may be out there further than what we're talking about, right? It's just something that occurred.
You're talking about a reality check. It's like, are we high, low?
Right, where do we stand and how is it, because all of this, I think of in terms of like, you know, and I've been saying this, we've been saying this for a while, that we have significant capital improvements that are on the horizon. And we can choose to say, or we can say, okay, well, that may be 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe, but it may be 2 years. And then, or maybe 5 years and then they all happen all at once. And how do we have a reality on the horizon. So how are we gonna moderate as we approach those things in order to not then have a tax rate that's as high as the towns? That is gonna drive us into
A couple other comments, and again, I think the best way for us to avoid future significant increase in costs is to invest
for storage
now
water protection.
in protection.
On your end.
We're gonna save a lot of money by doing that. Second thing is, you may remember 3 years ago, I think it was, we were running at a pretty significant cash deficit and had to be subsidized by the tax rate. Past 2 or 3 years, because of our new water rate structure, we pretty much leveled that off. And so I think, my suggestion is I think we're a lot better fiscal health than we were 3 years ago because of the water rate changes. And my prediction is if we are willing to step up to the plate and do more than the minimum source water protection, we're gonna save a bundle of money going forward.
And how do we feel about water rates generally? In terms of, so we went from being significantly below what the average would be, at least for our geographic area, sure, significantly below, to still relatively below. I mean, if you go over the bridge type areas.
Yeah, so water rates are comparably low here still.
Right.
But we're gonna be having a workshop in April to talk about the water rate structure again. And one of our proposals is to reduce the lower tiers.
Right.
So-called affordable water, such that the home that's not using a lot of outdoor water use for lawn maintenance and running conservative, the rates are gonna be the same or less. Which again, as I suggested, when you go off Cape and look around MWRA or something, pretty low. And the way we're gonna accomplish that is by keeping the rates higher on the, what we call excessive water use, outdoor water use. Some people are gonna be willing to pay that and not, go off, get the irrigation system off the supply, which I think will balance out our budget, continue to balance out our budget.
The fertigation wells, and we've seen a significant decrease in pumping, but because of a measurable decrease in pumping.
17%.
Right.
Definitely.
So, but and now this may be mercenary of me to say this at all, but that as these things succeed, then we're gonna draw less water revenue. And
That
therefore.
was the concern, but in reality, it hasn't happened because the water rates in the higher tiers have gone up.
So you think it will be stabilized, but it will never be an increase?
We're gonna watch it, we're gonna continue to watch it. We've been in this mode now for 3 years. And again, if you go back and forth 3 years, we were cash flow negative.
Which is where this is a big improvement.
It's a
But I'm
big-
just saying,
big
as
improvement.
time goes by, it may obviate the need to try to have it be a revenue source. And do you see what I'm saying? To try and offset some of this, if we just.
I think we have,
It's just gonna be system.
we need to raise the rates. I think we have room to do that and still be very competitive, if you will. Not that people have a choice to select
Exactly.
another one, but in terms of comparing other supplies, we're still pretty reasonable.
I'm just looking at it from the line.
Yeah, I think the long-term thing to look at is avoiding the treatment expenses. To me, that's the biggest fiscal objective and, counterintuitively, that means spend more money now to do the prevention.
And we explored it all. Like, first of all,
Yeah,
if we can avoid that point,
Yeah.
that would be fantastic.
yes.
And we contemplated it all, joining with other adjoining water departments. Presumably, everybody doesn't need to have one of these, small ones as opposed to
Yeah,
a bigger one that we can. I know that there's some interconnection between the water
a
department.
long time ago, there was, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yes, there have been some discussions, and a long time ago, there was the idea of a Cape Cod water authority. Not just Barnstable, but Berrybrook.
Right.
And so that you could scale this up. I mean, MWRA is the example. There's generally been a lot of resistance to that for a variety of reasons, local control, et cetera.
Yeah.
But frankly, we just had this meeting with the town council, which some of you may have tuned into and presented at that. Or our horn too much, but I think we look pretty good compared to the rest of the town in terms of water supply.
Okay.
So, my own feeling is I'd rather have them join us in what we're doing rather than us join them.
That occurred to me, like, we could build the plant and.
Well, or just,
charge them, or.
Yeah.
Do we want to be an operator or do we want to be a buyer or?
I mean, that option certainly exists down the line. I feel right now, we're able, because we're maybe a little bit smaller and independent, we're able to do some things like we're doing with our water rates, our irrigation policy, and our source water protection, which frankly, the other water departments aren't doing nearly to the degree we are. I heard at that meeting, I wasn't there, but one of the discussions was Hyannis, Barnstable needs another 2 million gallons per day. And I was meeting with Dan Santos on Friday. DPW director said, well, one way to do that is to cut down on irrigation. About 40% of the demand in the summer. We've done it. So, again, these are just, so I guess what I'm getting at is I think we're doing things that the rest of the town are not doing.
Okay.
And I'm not, and perhaps our good efforts would get diluted, if you will, not to use a
Okay.
pun.
All right.
I'm not sure about it, but that's one consideration. We're
Yeah,
able to
wow.
be a little more nimble here and focused. And I think we're doing a pretty good job.
I just want to speak to Seth. I mean, you're talking. I've been here a little while and I've gone through a lot of different commissioners. Some stayed a while, some didn't. But it's always been their philosophy that if we pay them a little more, they're gonna stick around. It's worked most of the way. We have two guys that are gonna be there 10 years. Bear and Jen, who's been here quite a while now. She's over 10, now she's 10 years this year. The other two are 9. We did have one guy who came in, got all the licenses in the world, and now he's an assistant down in Chatham.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't pay him the money of an assistant. So, yeah, he was a go-getter. But we've got somebody else in. He seems to be happy right now. So that's why we might be just as high as Osterville or something like that, but they're trying to keep, because we're so small. The larger companies can say, hey, we can give you a little more money and a little more incentive, come see us. But everybody's looking on the Cape right now.
Yeah.
Every water department's out advertising out there. And we gotta keep.
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, I have no problem with the increases. That's not what I'm talking about at all. Right? I'm just talking about the general, when it comes to our capital things over time.
Yeah.
I think you guys, I mean, that whole thing doesn't bother me at all, but I like that we get a thing about
That's
these huge ones.
why I suggested a couple of meetings ago that we have another
Yeah.
session. And
That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we need to pull the trigger on that. I
Yeah.
completely agree.
another planning session,
Yeah,
financial planning
and
session.
regard to the salaries, again, I just, this is mostly about going forward. You guys will take a look and,
All right.
but it's gotta be the same goal.
Yeah, I agree.
Whichever one it's, So.
We were trying to pull a quick one on you, I really. didn't.
Yeah, you know. Good to have consistency over the years.
Yeah, electric is the eye-watering increase.
Yeah.
That's a 20% bump. And if we can get control of that, you know, that's by far our biggest operating
Well, remember
expense.
when you wanted, remember the good idea would have been to put up some solar panels, remember?
Let's not go there.
Let's
You
not
put
talk
some on the
about
roof of the,
I don't remember that.
give a couple of roofs,
Yeah.
water department.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah, we have flat roofs,
Talked about
so
that.
it's kind of tough, but, and they got rubber roofs on them, so you can't really walk on them or do stuff with. But, there is one roof with a little bit of land beside it. We've actually talked at a meeting about getting a person in to take a walk around with us and look and give us a, you know, suggestion. Maybe you could put some here and then soak something up, put some here, soak something, some, you know, and turn it around a little better. I don't know how much, but, you know, we're trying to look at a way out there to see if we can decrease it in some way.
I don't have anything else. Anybody else?
No, I just, my negative, feelings for Beacon Hill. I'm sure that, you know, they're just gonna keep on lowering the acceptable rate of pollutants in water till it gets down to, you know, zero someday.
We're still under the EPA, new laws now, so I mean, we're doing cost testing this month, next month in April.
Yeah.
So, you know, every time we do it, we're like this,
Yeah.
open, you know, everything gets changed, gets a little more stringent every year. So we're just hoping that we can stick with it and stay with it, because that's something that we're talking about putting out a pamphlet to send out to the public, just to say where it actually is. If you could see the stuff it was in, you'd have no idea at all. I think Scott wrote something today, it's in shampoo, you know?
It's in everything.
It's in all the different things you wouldn't think it would be in, it's in, and it's just.
And the good news, just not to talk too much about that, but we do have a pretty good idea now exactly where the water comes from that gets to the wells. We had a study done last year.
Yep.
Tom Cambereri updated the model, so instead of the zone 2, which is a big area, that's kind of the worst case area that contributes to the well. But with this new model we did, we've got it narrowed down to a much more defined area. So we know which septic systems are contributing to the water supply. I mean, ideally, it doesn't make a lot of sense to discharge wastewater into your water supply. But everybody's done it partly because they didn't know the impact. But the good news is we've got a pretty good idea now, that target area. So that's what we're working on, is trying to.
And that will help with the forever chemicals too, do you think, that kind of project?
Sorry.
That kind of project will help with the PFAS?
Well, it
as
depends
well.
on which project we're talking about. I met with Dan Santos again to talk about the sewer, this townwide sewer plan, which eventually will come down Route 28 into our watershed, but we're talking 10, 20 or more years.
Right.
And then there's a lot of ifs with that. So they're gonna figure out how they're gonna pay for that. So there's a lot of hurdles to get there. So next best thing for that is upgrade septic systems to
And
higher
upgrading
treatment.
septic system
And
would help with the
They
PFAS.
would. There's some good studies on Long Island. We're using these that would remove a lot of the, by the way, PFAS.
Yeah.
As Fran's suggesting, we're gonna have more standards coming as we learn more. So it's emerging contaminants. And the technologies with these septic systems are geared to really target a pretty broad range of them.
Have they
So-
got ones now, newer IA systems that are filtering or able to filter those?
Yeah,
chemicals?
the wood chip systems are removing not all of the organic compounds, but many of them.
And the PFAS and all those?
We don't have
Not really,
we don't
right?
have the data on the PFAS yet. People
So
are doing the
that's-
analysis now, because it's such a new, it takes years to figure out exactly how this works, but certainly.
So maybe a whole new type of system that is integrating different aspects of
Right.
what exists and what we don't know how to do yet.
I'll,
You might just go down the street to, the property next to the oyster company where they have the peat moss septic system.
Yes, that's right. Yep, that's a good example. Yep.
Yep,
That's interesting.
I watched that being put in. The final step was tamping it down with snowshoes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just quickly on the 5-year, we did put in 25 for a capital year article, 25,000 for a new meter reading program. The current one we have is, it's a handheld system where we drive around with our hand out the window trying to get the readings, and sometimes we have to
actually walk up to the house and almost touch it for it to read. He's getting, we got them up to be clean. They came back and they worked even worse. I swear to God, this is a new system that can actually be mounted on top of the truck and you get an iPad and it'll go to a cloud-based area. We can come right back, plug it in, boom, everything's downloaded. We might be able to read meters in a day or two. Everything done. Just drive every street you could do it and done.
Now, is that something that needs to be a warrant or is?
It's a special article.
Not special article, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And there
Thank
might be, like you said, we'll work it out. Yeah, an
That's
article.
a special article.
Okay. Just while I'm thinking, I saw your. Estimate for our incoming budget. For next year, or for this year,
Oh, okay.
next year, it looks a little lower than that, just. For us, yeah, just because, sorry, that's last year.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, treasurer's report.
Treasurer's report, I'm going to first kind of very quickly go through the balance of the budget. I'm going to use just a summary of the changes so that we can just get down to a view of where we are after listening to the operating departments and taking into account some of the things that I see coming down the road for finance and in the other areas. The overall budget that we incurred today totals 6.5 million. It's a 16% increase. But of that, only 5.6 million is ongoing operating expenses.
Say that again.
Only 5.6 million is ongoing operating expenses. And that represents a 7.1% increase from last year's operating budgets. That carves out the special articles, which are largely, almost exclusively, one-time expenditures, and leaves just the ongoing expenses. That increase in ongoing expenses is approximately $370,000. Of that $370,000, $250,000 are wage increases. The fire, approximately 10%. The water department, we take into account the turnover, is 3.7%. And district and Freedom Hall, I put in at 6% to maintain the same ratio between the operating departments and finance and Freedom Hall. That 250,000 of the 370 is a 9.4% increase. The balance of the operating increase, or $120,000, is spread over the operating and other categories. Freedom Hall and the district have a $20,000 increase, of which the substantial portion is general insurance. And that is an estimate at this time. I've yet to receive the requested estimate from our agents. So I'm basing that on what the commercial increases are for property, liability, and auto in Massachusetts. As I said, looks to be about 16,000. Fire department, we've heard. The water department, employee benefits increases 23,000 or 2.5%. And the largest increase in that area is medical insurance, which is going up 8%. And that represents an increase of $32,000.8. Retirement pension contribution is going up 22,000. But given the audit report that indicates that we are well ahead of any other district in terms of our OPEB funding, I suggest that we limit our OPEB funding to the payment of retiree insurance, medical insurance, and make no direct deposit to the OPEB trust in the coming year. That's a $50,000 reduction from year to year. Reason for that is we have such a high percentage of our liability is funded already with investments. And we contribute each year by paying directly from operations the retiree insurance benefits. Normally, those would have been paid out of OPEB, which is what it's for, but we pay them directly out of operations, which is a form of contribution to OPEB. And I'm saying we limit it to that this year.
What percentage are we funded?
Pardon?
What percentage are we funded?
I'm sorry, I don't remember. It's in the audit report. It's actually in the governance report. It was one of the compliments that the auditors made of us. I think it is
90% of funding of the OPEB liability. The highest in the state, they believe.
yes.
So we currently pay out of operations 75%.
$100,000, over $100,000
Right, right.
dollars is paid. Instead of taking it out of the fund, we pay that out of operations. And that is a form of contribution.
If that is, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Debt service goes up 24.7 or 6.1%. Our long-term debt principal payments actually decrease this year 5,000, but we're going to be incurring $30,000 of short-term principal payments in the coming year. Part of that is a new bond that will be, I'll be floating in May to cover the water mains, the water department, primarily that, and refinancing the ambulance and service truck that we funded with a band last year. And finally, streetlights increased $3,000 because of electricity. And those are the major elements in the $120,000 of non-wage increases in the budget. Overall, the increase, as I said, 16%. When we do a preliminary calculation of the tax levy, it comes in at more like 11%. And the tax rate, based on what we heard today and what I've just reported, will be $1.36, which is an 11% increase. That's kind of the bottom line on the budget as we stand today. Any questions? Turning to February results very quickly. Revenue. Let me back up. February is the 8th month of the year, so we are 67% through the budget Using that as our target, our revenue is through February, 80% of that budget, generating surplus funds of 642,000. Expenditures are only 64%, meaning that we are 153,000 below target. Those two combine to provide approximately $800,000 of idle funds, which I have invested $700,000 in T-bills and $100,000 in cash reserves. There were no significant variances from the budget in any of the departmental details. And so I summarized it in that fashion. Any specific questions on February results? Finally, we have the audit report and the governance report. We also submitted our annual financial disclosure report to the municipal security agency that functions as the quasi SEC for municipal bonds. And that report was completed with the help of our financial advisor, Hilltop, and was submitted on time. The audit report in the governance section reflected 4 comments. Number 1 was the observation that because of the concentration of duties in the water department due to limited staff, they recommend the use of a lockbox system to establish as much segregation as possible. And so we have funded that. And as I said earlier, we thought that the new system would be cure most of the problems. The auditors disagreed, so we'll revisit the lockbox and begin that implementation. They complimented us on our T-bill investments, using idle cash to generate funds. They complimented us on our funding for OPEB. I think those were the major points in their governance observations. The report, the audit report, was a clean report, a clean opinion. It's based on GAAP, municipal GAAP, as opposed to the Massachusetts modified cash that we report on. So if you were to look at the GAAP report, you would find it very difficult to trace it back to what we report on a monthly basis. Municipal GAAP recognizes revenue when we bill it. It recognizes depreciation. It recognizes our liabilities on a GAAP basis rather than the cash basis that we recognize them for monthly reporting. I don't even want to attempt a reconciliation between GAAP results and modified cash. It just gets too involved and becomes meaningless by the time it's through. We're measured on modified cash. The borrowing public likes GAAP, and we use that to maintain our high credit rating.
Which is what?
I don't know exactly what it is, but it is, I can get that for you. It's a high rating.
That'd be great. Now, have you sent the government, or at least the governance section of that audit report to all of us?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. There was a 4th point, and I can't remember. And that's about, the one thing was, yeah, thank you. No, yes, and that brings me to the last point. They mentioned that we have several articles that are not being used. And I've been, in essence, saving those to help fund the disposition of the school property. I believe that the next special or annual district meeting, those ought to be formally repurposed to fund the ultimate disposition of the school property. There's approximately $350,000 that can be used to offset the debt that we will incur the disposition of the school property. And there's one other one that I want to mention is last year, when we compiled the warrant, we overused our free cash by approximately $37,000, $37,098 to be exact. We didn't catch it before the warrant was finalized and voted on. We found it subsequently, and we need to allocate $37,098 out of our current free cash to cover the water stabilization transfer. That happened to be the last item in the warrant, and therefore that was the last one that I could not fund with free cash. We have enough free cash to use for that, and we have $723,000 left over for current year needs. But it's something that we really want to address either at a special district meeting or at the annual district meeting.
Annual district meeting should be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
That's it. Okay. On to the school. As far as I know, no further destruction of windows or interior property.
Well, gotten added in today, a little bit more. But Nimitz is on it.
So, yeah, Mr. Nimick was there today.
We're referring to the, again, for the audience at home, the alarm
The
company.
alarm company was installing, over the next couple of days, he'll be installing the heat detectors and the motion detectors. And the motion detectors will come with an alarm, I believe, to, you know, scare the bejesus out of somebody. So, did they break into the window or just?
There just seems to be far more glass all around, more furniture breakage. I haven't seen another broken window. Glass spread around.
Okay. All right. So for the special district meeting, we need to come up with a warrant article. And
I'll be happy to draft that and circulate it.
well, I've been thinking what the easiest thing to do would be to request money for architects. Because they can do the RFP, request for proposal. And so I have a question. You talked to the procurement officer at the town, and she said that they have comprised a list for them of 3 architectural companies that they use.
They have a list, I don't know if it's 3, they have a list which under regulations that a town can operate, they can have standby architectural consultants.
Okay. So can we do that?
I do not believe as a district we can do that.
What happened to that person that we talked to about being our procurement officer?
Oh, she's still there.
Oh, she's just
She's
waiting.
on hold, yeah, yeah.
Fran, the only, I thought about this a little bit too. We already have the money to do that. Because we have that $207,000 that speaks to what are we gonna do with the school,
Yeah.
including demolition. So
Right.
if we wanted to, we could just
We can just act on.
act on that. So what we're really doing is, it's a little unusual because it's not an expenditure, well, we're asking for the town's, the village's approval to spend the money that we already have in the,
Right, yeah,
for that purpose.
for this purpose, for the architects to do an RFP to demolish the building.
We should
Yeah, so
definitely
we could-
word it to approve the demolition of and,
Yes.
you know, engage the services of, for the purpose, or, you know, and how.
Services of an architect to do a request for proposals
Yeah,
to be paid for from. Blah, blah, blah.
but I think it's key that we have to approve the demolition of.
Yes,
And we should do separate, I don't think separate ones, I don't know what the legality of that. Charlie, maybe one of those or, detail, but definitely should say to approve the demolition of, I think.
I
So that we
agree.
don't have to dicker about it any further and then have two separate ones. Remember, what did we do where we were like, well, we had two linked topics, but there was one that was, I think when we did the school originally, when we first voted to take it over, or maybe even the last one, when we re-voted to do it, that there were two things that were linked, but it was like, well, what if this one doesn't pass and this one does pass, and then when we vote on this one, don't you remember that?
No.
Do you, I'm not the only one, there was something that we had that was like, they were tied, but they were separate. But one was dependent upon the other. I forget what the exact situation is. But I mean, I think that we should have it in one concise.
Yeah,
and that the language to approve the demolition of the new school
Yes,
property.
that it be an affirmative.
Yes. I agree. Do you want me to do a draft? Would you like to do a draft?
no, you just need to show it to Charlie.
Okay, I'll circulate it to you too.
Yeah. So, that's fine.
And
Yeah,
we're all set with the Katuitt Federated Church Hall on May 4th at 1 PM. I've been in touch, I've put them in touch. Charlie's Music, Jerry's evidently not around anymore. He's having health issues, but
Yeah.
we've connected them. And then I think it's just the public notice, and Charlie will post it.
we need to send out, postcards again for that.
You want me to draft that too?
No, I think Lisa and I can do
Lisa,
it.
you do? Okay.
Just need to modify the last one that we did.
And the fire department has graciously agreed to help us move chairs from here to the firehouse or the Federated Church on the morning.
So they don't have enough chairs.
They have about 150, so just to be on the safe side.
And then, Freedom Hall, we had our annual inspection by the town. And several of our exit and emergency lights were down and need to be replaced. So, we had, the electrician come over and look at it, and
Almost all of them were, the emergency lights were down, and so, yes, he's come and done everything he can, if supply chain problem, we want to replace the emergency lights, instead of paying $120 for batteries for non-LED, we decided to just replace them with LED, which are less expensive than the batteries themselves, LED lights, but there's a back order issue. So he's gotten everything up to inspection ready by replacing batteries, and he's waiting for the LED component to come in, and then he'll finish.
that's, Freedom Hall has stayed busy. We have, the town's gonna be using it twice next week. First they have a program where you can join the program and learn about the town of Barnstable, all the departments. And so they're coming over here to have a program next Tuesday. And then Wednesday, the local comprehensive committee will be in town to ask people their opinion of different things.
The concerns of Katuitt is coming too, isn't it? Isn't that coming up? Concerns of Katuitt? when they all come. Mark Ells and all those people. Isn't that coming right up? I read
I
it,
don't
something,
know.
14? Anyway. what do you guys-
Yeah, well, they just meet with the Civic Association Board.
Oh, is that, I thought it was a public.
No, unfortunately, it's not. That's the whole problem with that. They shouldn't just be meeting with the Civic Association Board, you know?
Well, there you go. So-
Yeah, you know, because,
Well, there you go, we'll see.
Are you on the Civic Association?
No, not since, no.
No.
There is a
I'm
couple
boring.
of chats. with-
okay,
I have one other request. The Osprey Men's Club has inquired as to whether they could borrow our TP signs for a period of time for a recruitment drive. Say whenever we do not need them. I told them I would recommend that. It's a good group that does college scholarships and other things to the tune of like $20,000, but obviously they will use it whenever we don't.
Responsible young men.
yeah,
Responsible old men. So,
yeah, we need dates when they want. them.
yeah, I suggested that we would need the signs for at least 2 weeks, probably perhaps a month before our special meeting and our annual meeting, but after that, we could probably give them some time.
Oh, okay. See,
All right, anything else and any public comment?
There's one comment was about initially not being able to see things, to see the shared documents. There's only one other message here. From someone who said at 7:30, she told me on for the school discussion, but we'll have to log off. I'll watch the recording to catch up. Thank you for making that possible. That's it.
all right. Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.